Now, as the discussion around the UK's approach to taking in refugees from Ukraine intensifies, more questions have been raised about the government's Nationality and Borders Bill. It's been described as the cornerstone of the government's new plan for immigration and involves blocking or criminalising anyone who does not arrive in the United Kingdom as part of one of the Home Office's pre-arranged resettlement routes, plans to process refugees offshore and revoking British citizenship without notice. Let's discuss this in a bit more detail with Emily Fielder, who's from the Adam Smith Institute, the neoliberal think tank. Emily, good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for joining us. So I just want to try and get an understanding of your take on this from the Adam Smith Institute in terms of the Nationality and Borders Bill. What are your concerns? I think you have a few.
Yeah, so I would say that our main concern is probably what they're calling Clause 11. So this clause would allow immigration authorities to differentiate between what they would call legal and illegal asylum seekers. So they'd split them into Group 1 asylum seekers and Group 2. So Group 1 asylum seekers would be those that the government has deemed they've come to the UK directly. But if they are deemed to be in Group 2, they'll have entered unlawfully and therefore may be granted inferior forms of protection. Actually, they may even face punishment, so their claim could be made admissible. They could face a jail sentence of up to 4 years. So the government has argued that the bill is compatible because the article refers to refugees coming directly from their country of origin. Unfortunately, the UNHCR says this is a pretty strong misinterpretation. States can actually only treat refugees differently if they've already settled in another country or moved on for reasons unrelated to needs for protection. So our main concern with this is that actually enforcement that the government has put on asylum seekers in the past hasn't worked. So no two-tier systems, however strong, will probably exert a significant deterrent effect on people that are already willing to come across and risk their lives. So that's a real problem. Okay,
and so are you saying that we should have been able to learn that from history, and actually we're sort of reinventing a scheme that simply does not work?
Yeah, we absolutely are. I think the main, the current Home Office policy is kind of assuming that asylum seekers have detailed knowledge about how kindly we treat asylum seekers when they come over here. But actually studies which have looked into the links between European asylum policies and the number of asylum applications received in each country have found no correlations between things like labour market access for asylum seekers, which is also something we're talking about in the Institute at the moment, and an increase in asylum applications. And actually qualitative studies have shown that many asylum seekers don't even know what the final destination is when fleeing conflict in the first place.
Yeah, they just want to get out, presumably.
Yeah,
exactly. Kind of main ambition. In terms of work, then, so there's a year-long work ban for asylum seekers at the moment, and I believe that you've been kind of trying to dive into the economic burden that itself is.
Yeah, actually, the economic burden is pretty substantial. So interesting, new figures have been released this week, which have shown that the current employment ban will have cost the taxpayer over £826 million by the end of 2022. Whereas conversely, lifting on the ban on employment would take asylum seekers off state support and would actually mean that they were able to contribute taxes.
I see. So it wouldn't just be a case of cancelling out the cost. It would actually be that people can start contributing via taxes, well, almost immediately in theory.
Yeah, exactly. So interestingly, there's a clause which has now been added to the Nationality and Borders Bill, and this would permit asylum seekers to work if they're still waiting for a decision after 6 months. And actually, I think this would be a really good idea because, as you may know, the Office for National Statistics has actually estimated that there is now a record 1.2 million job vacancies across all industries in the UK. Now, if we allowed asylum seekers to work earlier, this would mean that they were able to contribute positively. So, for example, they could help fill those gaps while they wait a decision on an asylum claim. But also it would enable them to sort of contribute positively to the country which they have moved to, which would actually probably benefit their mental health as well.
Emily, I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. Thanks for explaining that to us.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. That is Emily Fielder from the Adam Smith